Hi, let's now start with the first block of Module 3, Intraday and Balancing Markets, and this block will look at how we go from market outcomes to physical operation. First of all, let's set the scene and refresh our memory with the day-ahead market clearing example that we got out of the previous module. Remember that after the day-ahead market clearing, what we get is a schedule for supply and demand, so out of all the original offers, the various agents in the market will know how much they are scheduled for supply and for consumption. Here are the list, for example, of our supply and consumption offers and the related schedule after the market clearing, from G1 to G8 that are scheduled on the supply side, D1 to D9 that are scheduled on the demand side. Remember also that out of the day-ahead market clearing, we get the system price, which there was at 37.5 euro per megawatt hour, corresponding to the price offer of G8 on the supply side. Now that we remember what the day-ahead market clearing is, let's also remember that this day-ahead market is just about contracts. We're having contracts between supply and demand about supplying energy and consuming energy. But at the end of the day, this is a financial market. We've only made contracts. We're not forcing anyone to consume. We're not forcing anyone to produce energy. After the clearing, both the market participant and the system operator are informed about the market clearing outcomes, being both the price and the volumes that are scheduled for each market time unit. Remember also there that even though we look at a single market time unit, for simplicity, there are actually 24 program time units or market time units to consider every time we clear the day-ahead market, since in Nord Pool we have this 24 hours block to consider at once. In the European setup, the market participant, based on these schedules after market clearing, will what we call self-dispatch. That means that for supplying this quantity of energy in the contract, you can decide as a supplier to use your assets the way you want. So you may prefer to produce part of the block of energy with wind power and then complement with your CHP. You may also combine hydro and solar. It's up to you. Same on the consumption side. When you have a block of energy that is scheduled for market time unit, you can decide how you're going to consume it. The day-ahead market clearing is happening quite a long time before actual operation. We have this gate closure, which is around noon in Europe, exactly noon for the Nord Pool in Scandinavia, but actual operation is between midnight and midnight of the following day. So this 24-hour window that we're looking at is actually scheduled for quite a bit in advance, actually between 12 and 36 hours in advance. Quite a lot can happen between the clearing itself and the schedules that are coming out of the clearing and this actual operation. Think of a wind power producer using a forecast for offering in the market and eventually getting a schedule based on this forecast. The forecast might have some errors. There might just be some update later on during the day that informs you, no, you're not going to produce this amount of energy, you're going to produce less or you're going to produce more. So this would be a change in your schedule, actually. You may also operate a thermal unit, a conventional generation unit, and then because of maintenance or a technical problem, you're not able to actually deliver what you planned. So whatever the reason, there might be possibilities that what you're actually able to deliver or to consume is going to be different from your original schedule. Because of that, and as we have to converge towards real-time operation, we have to introduce three crucial concepts, which are balanced responsible parties, which we'll explain in the next slide, adjustment markets, like the intraday market mechanism, which we'll discuss in a further block, and that allows the participant to have some new contracts to change their schedule. And finally, the balancing market, where we pass the ball to the system operator that organize and operate this market near real time as to converge toward real-time operation, where we need this balance between demand and supply. So what is a balanced responsible party, abbreviated BRP? Being production, consumption or trade activity, you have to be under a balanced responsible party. This balanced responsible party has an agreement with Energinet, and this agreement is about assuming responsibility for that activity. So again, production, consumption or trade. Assuming responsibility is actually about a financial responsibility. If there are deviations from schedules and there are some costs induced by these deviations, then you will have to assume and pay for this cost. This cost may be direct costs due to the change in schedule, but this may be also penalization in some markets. For Denmark, the list of BRPs is available at this link. You may want to have a look at it. It's quite interesting to see that the BRPs may not be all that you think of. Some of the BRPs are actually banks or financial institutions, and that's where you realize it's about financial responsibility. So some of the players place themselves under a bank that will endorse them somehow and take this responsibility. And then some of the large players can have enough liquidity somehow to have this financial responsibility and are also on this list. Another aspect is that some of the players may not be located in Denmark. They might be in Germany, in the UK, etc. This concept of BRP exists in all of the European countries. There might be some slight changes in the definition and in the relationship between the BRPs and the system operator, but the basic concept is the same. When the system operator is assessing the deviation and taking care of the eventual settlement, the system operator do that with the BRPs, and then the BRPs will handle the relationship with the actual producers and consumers. If you would like to look into detail into the regulation for Denmark, for BRPs, you are welcome to click on this link and you will have access to the relevant document. Also, to refresh your mind, you may want to click on this link to look at roles and responsibilities of the various actors in the electricity market in Denmark. Now that we've understood what the concept of BRPs is, and we have discussed the concept of self-dispatch, what can happen when we realize there are deviations from the original schedule that we get out of the day-ahead market clearing? So let's assume a wind power producer gets a new forecast later in the afternoon. The forecast is different from the original forecast used to offer in the electricity market, and now we have to find a way to meet our commitment to supply this energy, but it doesn't seem that the energy is going to come from the wind farm. If you were a supplier with different units in your portfolio, you can actually redispatch. So that means that maybe you were not planning on using some of your conventional generation units because you were going to supply all the energy in your contract with wind power, but now that the forecast has changed and it seems you have less wind power generation than originally thought of, maybe you're going to need to use your conventional generation unit and you will redispatch to meet your commitment. Alternatively, you may go through these intraday markets that we'll discuss in the next block, and you will find ways to adjust your schedule through agreements with other players. Note that these players may not obviously be in Denmark. You may also do this agreement with Germany or some other areas in Europe. Finally, if you have no other way to correct for your schedule or to redispatch, or if you think it's actually more interesting to wait for the real time, you will eventually go through this balancing market where the system operator will be responsible for putting back the system into balance, and you would have to pay for the penalties or any costs that are induced by your own imbalance. Now, I would like to invite you to use the self-assessment quiz to check your understanding.